Good evening humans, Tyrannosaurusmoth here, and tonight we're taking a look at the HorrorHound from Creatureplica. This is something I definitely remember seeing solicited like a while back. I can't remember when. I looked up like a Kickstarter, which I don't think they did. I think they just did straight pre-orders, but the Foosh had an article from 2015. And so I guess this goes that far back. They were on Big Bad Toy Store at one point, and I missed the ball on that one. But then I saw Just Jay Hernandez, who is here on YouTube, post photos of the Rougarou that he got, and I was like, okay, I just need to jump in. I need to get this HorrorHound because this looks badass, and I'm definitely not disappointed. I love that we're getting cryptid figures, and you know that this kind of zombie werewolf sort of mashup just looks incredible. So let's get right into this review. Let's do this. Aesthetically speaking, the HorrorHound is just absolutely beautifully grotesque in all the ways it should be. It is pure B-movie level just goodness. And I love it for that. I mean, honestly, this whole design is like a mix between a werewolf, a zombie, and a Frankenstein's monster. And you know, I am so here for that. And not only that, but the figure itself, the way it's proportioned, the way the paint is done, all very crisp, by the way. Like, just absolutely gorgeous details, especially in the gore. It just kind of calls back to that mid to late 90s McFarlane era, and I love it. Like, it's really cool to see that being done. I mean, because McFarlane isn't really focusing on horror at this point. Clearly, he's doing a lot of DC and all that, and you know, it's kind of sad because the horror stuff is great. I mean, those are my favorite figures back in the day. Like, Movie Maniacs were that was my jam. That was when I started getting 2 of every figure, 1 to keep in the box, 1 to display. And yeah, this totally harkens back to that, and you just get gorgeous details. It's both sculpt and paint in the face. I mean, that looks purely menacing. It looks gross, but in the best way. Again, paint super crisp. Just really highlights all the best parts of the sculpt, and that's what it should do. I would say my only gripes with any of the aesthetics would be just, you know, the joints. You know, you can see the ratchets and stuff like that. However, that's what's keeping it stable, so I can't actually complain. That's not a genuine gripe. It's just kind of, you know, just clearly you can see it and blah blah blah. But I mean, this works again on that nostalgic factor, and that works for me. And you know, maybe the thigh cut, it's a little low, so you can kind of notice it a little bit more when you're moving around. But I mean, beyond that, like those are easily overlooked by me. So you know, if that's a thing for you, it's worth keeping in mind. But for me, aesthetics are just absolutely beautiful. For accessories, the only thing the HorrorHound comes with is this base or stand that is just as meticulously painted and sculpted as the figure itself, and that is wonderful to see. As you can see, you got some nice like mud / moss and some vegetation, and you get the grave, which is supposed to be the HorrorHound's previous form, their human form with the name Warren, and the skull and the wings, just beautifully sculpted on there. And this is a separate piece in the package, and then you just kind of slide it in. I'm not going to take it out because it's seated in there very firmly. As you can see, you have 3 different pegs, so you can kind of fool around with which, like, kind of different poses and stuff like that. Bottom is just your standard information, stuff like that. It's pretty blank. But they even sculpted the back of the gravestone, which is really cool. So, again, and painted. So all stuff they didn't have to do, but they did do, and just adds to the ambiance and the just wonderful feel to this entire figure. For articulation for the HorrorHound, we get an interesting mix here, and a lot of nods to the kind of more old school late 90s, early 2000s experimentation with different types of articulation that we got around that era, which adds to the charm of the figure, but does contribute to a couple confusing choices that I understand probably why they were made, but just, you know, are what they are. So starting at the head, we're on a ball joint, so we can come up about that far. It's not so much the hair on the back of the head that's getting in the way. I think it's actually the neck sculpt itself. And then we come down, and we're about there. we can get a little bit of tilt. And so we're kind of coming all around like that. So there's our full range of motion. Coming down the shoulders and about there, not quite our T-pose, mostly because of just how tight the socket is around the hair. But we can get it up relatively far, so it definitely works. Then we get our bicep swivel. We have single jointed elbows, which are going to get us, again, about 90, and we can extend all the way. Then we get to the wrist, and here we have a swivel here right before all these staples, and then a hinge at the actual wrist itself. So again, kind of a more old school approach, kind of cool. Here's where one of the parts I'm confused about, and that is that I thought this was going to be a ball joint here in the diaphragm, but nope, just swivel. And we have a swivel at the waist as well. So my guess is that that was a production thing. It was just easier to have the sculpt for the upper torso, the mid torso, and then the hips. Because I mean, honestly, I would have been happier with like a solid piece here, but again, I can kind of understand why they did it. So that is what it is. Coming down to the hips themselves, we have that something we see on Diamond Select a lot, which is the kind of hinge swivel hips. So you can see you kind of come up there and you kind of hinge out that way with the hips. Then we come down, we do have a thigh cut. It's a little bit lower than we're used to seeing on figures most of the time, but it totally works and helps you get where you need to go. Then we have our knees, single jointed, but really great, like fantastic range. They really worked with the sculpt there, which is super cool to see, and you got those ratcheted joints, which are going to help keep it up a little bit more. Then we come down, the first part of the foot. So same thing, single hinge, has the ratchet, so you can come to about there, and you can fully extend. Then we come down to the toes. So you come about there with a point, and about there, and then it swivels, but we do not, unfortunately, get any sort of pivot or ankle rocker, which would have helped greatly, but again, I understand why they would take that, or just maybe this in terms of stability or something like that. So that is articulation. Seeing how the HorrorHound sizes up, here it is with some horror and cryptid adjacent style figures, with some Hasbro stuff, with some imports, with some other monsters. Finally, with an articulated icons Oni, and yours truly in human form as an articulated icons ninja. So my final thoughts on the HorrorHound from Creatureplica is that if you are a collector of horror action figures or cryptid action figures, this is absolutely for you. It is beautifully grotesque, and again, details, articulation, all that stuff, plus the whole like mid-late 90s nostalgia factor also, I think, totally brings this up in value. So, and again, minus the couple of weird articulation things, which again kind of add to the charm in a way. I just can't recommend this enough. And if you want one, Creatureplica currently has these up on their website, so I'll be linking to them in the description below. And yeah, so I hope you found this review both entertaining and informative. And if you did, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and or sharing. And that being said, and if you want to help out the channel in other ways, I will also have links to do so in the description as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you take care of yourself, take care of those around you, and most importantly, stay weird, simians.